these dual plot isotope graphs, which are kind of confusing and kind of hard. We presented those. I remember sharing those graphs with fellow scientists who weren't familiar with stable isotopes or food webs, and they said that graph doesn't make any sense to me. And so they suggested, it might be better if you could come up with a cartoon that you could share with us, or we could share with watershed managers, which would get sort of emphasize the point that there's a shift in what the native gobies are feeding when the streams are invaded. And that's where we came up with these cartoons where you can see the arrow point is basically, it's a directional a direction of the food. So the arrow points up, and that means that the fish is feeding on the chironomid, or it's feeding on the algae. And the size of the arrow represents how important it is. So a large arrow would indicate that the goby is feeding heavily on that food resource. A smaller arrow would indicate that it's feeding less on that. And you can see that in these cartoons where the chironomids, which is a tiny insect larva that's in the stream, and it's a very important food resource. It's fed on by fish and birds, and just a very important food resource. And the gobies really seem to like to feed on the chironomids. And you can see in this cartoon where there are now pisciliids, that arrow has essentially decreased in size, and the chironomids are less. It's not that they're less important, but we're not quite sure what's happening there. But the gobies just are not feeding on them as heavily as they are in the native streams, and we think that has probably to do with the fact that, again, there are now in the invaded streams, there are high densities of these mosquito fish, and they're just having a smorgasbord feast on the chironomids, and there are fewer chironomids available to feed on. That's the first mechanism. The second is that mosquito fish are very aggressive, and if you stand in a stream and there are mosquito fish, you'll feel these little nibbles on your leg, and you look down and the mosquito fish are essentially nibbling on your leg. And we think that and we've seen them actually go after the goby. So if a goby will be resting on the bottom of a stream, and the mosquito fish will come in and nip at it and scare it away. And so we think that the mosquito fish are affecting the behavior of the gobies, so that they can't feed. So they might, in a native stream, the goby is just sort of taking its time and feeding, selecting things that it wants to eat. But in an invaded stream, it doesn't have that luxury.
Visit the Natural Enquirer website for more information. There you can learn more about how to analyze and understand your data.